This is Scuba Goat
Under the Sea,
the podcast for the inquisitive diver.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to the Scuba Goat podcast. And if this is your first listen, then hang on to your fins, because we have a true champion of the environment joining us as our next guest. I'm elated to welcome Andy Ridley, the co-founder of the renowned global movement Earth Hour. But that's not all. Andy has also created Citizens of the Great Barrier Reef, an inspiring network dedicated to driving positive action for one of the world's most precious natural wonders. And speaking of natural wonders, we also have Becky Evers join us in the conversation, who is Citizens Project Officer. With a deep-rooted passion for conservation, Andy has spent years spearheading remarkable initiatives that have captured the hearts and minds of millions. And today, as the CEO of Citizens of the Great Barrier Reef, Andy continues to inspire individuals, organisations and industries to act and protect the reef. Now, last week I had the privilege of attending the premiere screening of Reef Shot Revealed, a Stan original documentary featuring citizens and their latest major plan to include everybody in the race to save the reef from climate change. And now it's your turn. Cash is always welcome, but right now your eyes and cameras are just as valuable. Let's dive in and find out why. Guys, welcome to the show. How are we doing?
Cash is always welcome.
That was it.
Well, you know, if you're going to put facts out there, you've got to be, you know, shoot from the hip. Give us your cash.
True that. Nice to see you, Matt.
Yeah, and you, sir, and you. Let's start with you, Becky. Where are you from? How on earth have you ended up where you are now? And let's have a little bit of a background on your diving as well.
Yeah, okay. Well, I'm from the UK originally. I left in 2017 to move to Thailand to become a dive master, which is probably around about where I met you, actually, in
Yes.
Khao Lak, which is diving off the Simlin Islands. Worked there for a while and then moved to Australia. Did a little bit in New South Wales for a bit and then ended up in Cairns. And I was volunteering basically for Citizens from the first census, taking photos on the boats of the reef, getting on as many expeditions as possible, taking photos on the surveys basically. And then, just been kind of around and been brought in for various elements of the project support. Pretty much brings us to,
Well, you're sort of missing a bit there. Well, we get to work with Bex every couple of weeks.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. And I also go out. Yeah, I also go out and do the Crown of Thorns. Thank you. Crown of Thorns starfish protection scheme as well. So I go out and I am part of the Crown of Thorns project. So I go out weeks at a time, various parts of the reef. At the moment, we're actually visiting the Swains, which is pretty remote. And I'm just out there on a boat for 2 weeks. Yeah.
And it was back
doing. You might have to expand a little bit on what the Crown of Thorns is for those people that aren't in Australia.
Yeah. Okay. So the Crown of Thorns is a starfish that is actually attacking and eating the reef. Starts off with just kind of a few of those, and then they multiply very quickly. They're kind of they're I guess reef pests, and they're very, very destructive. And once they've started on a reef, an area of the reef, the reef will die very quickly. They really do take over. So we're out there mitigating this by injecting the starfish with vinegar, a lot of surveillance as well. So even if there's no crown of thorn starfish that's present, it's good for us to kind of report back on what we're seeing. But that's kind of one part.
What is it that what is it that the vinegar does when you inject that?
It kills them. It poisons them.
Okay.
They die.
So pretty crazy animals. If you look them up on YouTube, they look very alien. They're actually endemic. They are meant to be on the reef, but they have got into very sort of swarm proportions on some reefs. And they're actually responsible for just over 50% of the coral cover loss currently.
Wow.
So they're a really serious threat. And it's grown, but there are now, is it 5 boats that roam up and down the reef? 5 or 7, I can't remember.
It's 3 companies. I'm not sure how many boats each company has, but yeah.
So they send teams out, which Beck's one.
Yeah, it's a big task for sure.
the project we'll talk about, Great Reef Census, sort of helps with providing reconnaissance data to tell where those are. So crown of thorns management. So that's what Bex does. She jumps in the water and goes and gets rid of these highly damaging starfish. But have a look on YouTube.
And
they're crazy.
They reproduce really quickly as well.
The thing is, they're kind of like this. They're a hot topic, but they're still kind of very people are unaware of exactly, what is how they're like multiplying. Why are they coming here? Why are they here? Why are they on this reef? It's like they're cryptic. They're a cryptic animal. So it's super that's part of the research at the moment. Is that's what everybody is trying to work out, is why are they here? What are they doing? And all of this knowledge and kind of understanding is part of that kind of project as well, as much as just trying to get rid of them and trying to contain them. It's also just learning as much as we can about them. And that comes in lots and lots of different ways of surveillance. So, and the photo surveys is one element of that, because if you can see the coral cover of the reef and get a really strong snapshot of how the reef is looking over every year, which is what we're kind of trying to do with citizens, was stitching together these images and providing this full snapshot of the Great Barrier Reef. You can look back and see, okay, this reef had this much coral cover in the first census that we completed, and now by the third census, this coral cover is damaged. What is the damage? Is it destruction? Is it bleach? Is it essentially pests? So is it?
I guess the other bit there is that you're actually able to identify what reefs, like a really good, healthy reef, it's essentially a massive food source for crown of thorns. So I sort of, you've got climate change, number one biggest global threat to all reefs, and then on the Great Barrier Reef, you've got two other really sort of significant ones. One is crown of thorns starfish, and the other one is runoff. And they're the sort of, so those second two, you should theoretically be able to do something about. Climate change, globally, we need to do something about. So you've got these kind of parallel things going on. One, global response to climate change, everyone needs to do it. And then the second one is, well, how do you scale up your conservation efforts? So better management, getting rid of, things like crown of thorns, massively improving runoff. That's all stuff that you should be able to deal with locally. So that's classic conservation dilemma or challenge.
Okay, well, let's break them down a little bit, because obviously we've touched on environmental issues like global warming, etc., etc. There's so many. There's always this constant flow of social media. Is it an issue? Isn't it an issue? What is the issue? Blah blah. And I think there's a lot of fogginess starting to creep into what people understand as the major issues on global warming, on the effects of reefs. So can you just break it down for us, Andy, and just give it a little bit more precision for those that might be still a bit hazy?
Sure. So maybe, even the story of why we set this organization up probably kind of is a good way of telling the story. And in 2016, 2017, we had these two massive high mortality bleachings on the Great Barrier Reef. So high mortality of coral on the Great Barrier Reef, obviously. So across the whole of the system, which we were talking about its scale, it was pretty much everywhere. There were certain areas that hit more than others. But 2016, there was a really big mass coral bleaching with high mortality, so a lot of coral loss, and that was unusual in its own right. But then what was really mad was the second year we had another one. So 2017, same, probably worse. So you had sequential bleachings. And I think basically that kind of shook everyone up, because the first year everyone's like, okay, this is kind of, we've had bleachings before. It's a kind of bit of a, one-off, then there'll be a gap. But this time it was like, do it two in a row. And there was a conference held in Townsville where the Marine Park Authority for the whole Great Barrier Reef is based in July 2017. So after the second of these big sequential bleachings, and there's kind of a question came, what the hell are we going to do? And so a lot of the work that we do now came out of, well, here's what we need. Here's some of the stuff that we need to do. But yeah, suffice to say, the reef is, although we've had bleachings every year since then, or not every year, but nearly every year since then, there hasn't been high mortality. So they've been short, the water's cooled down, and the reefs have generally recovered. But we are going into a La Nina year, and that's when we expect there to be, much harsher circumstances again. So that stuff. So just to kind of give you sort of what happens with bleaching, I mean, sort of a couple of things. It is primarily sort of basically the water gets really hot. So, we're transferring vast amounts of heat into the water at the moment globally, and you start to see that hot water goes over the reef. But what also happens often during bleachings is you'll see the water's hot, but also it'll be low. The wind won't be moving much, and so you won't have many ripples on top of the water, and you'll find there's hardly any cloud cover. So you've got multiple things happening that heats the water. The water's not moving, so it's not removing the waste from around the coral. The top levels of the water getting much hotter than lower down, so you might have an average temperature that's still relatively similar, but the top layers start to get hotter and hotter and hotter. And so then the coral starts to bleach, which is where you want to do the description of what bleaching is?
I think you've got it.
Okay, so basically, it's kind of, So basically, the coral starts to feel stress, and in the end, if it's under that amount of stress for more than a couple of weeks, you start to see mortality.
Mm-hmm. Now, it's also important to note. I mean, there's going to be people who say, "Well, bleaching is a natural occurrence," and indeed, I believe it is. But the commonality of it is 4 to 6 years, I think. Correct me if I'm wrong. But now we're seeing it, as you say, year after year after year. So the reef's not having the opportunity to recover.
Yeah, well, I mean, I think it's these high mortality bleaching. So you'll see bleaching fairly regularly, but maybe locally. And all sorts of things can do it. It's not just hot water. It could be large amounts of fresh water coming across a reef or stuff like that. So, but what the big difference is, and it's not just bleaching, but it's also the wild weather, is you're getting far, far more frequent, very, very hardcore bleachings, and you're getting much bigger storms. This is sort of globally, or bigger cyclones, or and so they also whack the reefs really badly as well. So it's all this energy going into our oceans and then converting into heat or into storms or some or such things.
Yeah. And what's the cause of it?
Well, emissions into atmosphere. It's global emissions going up rapidly, creating higher temperatures.
Okay, and what's your thoughts behind? I mean, I'm narrowing it down a bit now, but we talk about emissions, and you initially think about industry and motor vehicles and fossil fuels, all that kind of stuff. What about the impact? Has anyone looked at the impact of the growth of EVs and how that might be impacting?
I think the big areas that I think are under discussed, the biggest one probably is digital, because we're using so much more computing power, and things like cryptocurrency are just like out of control use of service centers for who knows what, really, kind of probably giant pyramid scheme type cryptocurrency type stuff. But it's just the growth of that area is so extraordinary. So that's one area. I guess with the EVs, look, I guess the thing about EVs is you're trying to really radically change the way that we generate electricity, that we use electricity, and how we don't, so we definitely move away from particularly coal-fired power stations, but also essentially all fossil fuel powered technology. And I guess that's kind of what that transition is about. I think probably the big question I would go, are we globally still taking this seriously? I mean, the progress is so slow. There is progress, but it's slow as, and we're already heading towards 1.5 degrees above pre-industrial.
I guess the point is there's lots of potential ways that you could look at changing how we are responding. And there could be negatives to those as well. But I think it's just important that we are looking at the proof, of what it is exactly we're looking at. And that's what I think Citizens is really trying to do, is it's just trying to create that snapshot and inform reef managers and reef scientists so we can learn more and understand what is happening and how we can better protect and better conserve. And that's where that's what Citizens is kind of doing as a project. And when we mentioned the crown of thorns starfish, these risks that are occurring towards the reef, if we can look at where they're happening and why they're happening and how frequently they're happening, then that's where we can start creating these mitigations and plans to kind of protect it.
Not to make too simplistic an argument about it, though, Matt. I reckon, when you look at everything, until you get to a point where it's, where remuneration and profit are more likely to be made by not damaging the planet than by damaging the planet, you can't deal with these issues. And essentially, I guess where we're working at is we're going, okay, well, let us hope that humanity gets its act together over the next decade or so. And in the meantime, we need to be doing everything we can to prepare ourselves for, what we now need to do. And essentially, you've got these two things going on. The first one is you've got to dramatically cut emissions. And the second one is because we left everything so late, you've got to dramatically scale up conservation. I think what we're working on is really, well, how do you put in place the model to scale up conservation? Because scale up is going to require every asset, every individual, everybody you can get, whether you're a diver or whether you're working in a company somewhere in Sydney or in London or wherever, that we need to harness the potential within those organizations and individuals. So we're building, a 21st century conservation operation designed to be scaled. But it really does completely, rely on the idea that we would also be the globe will, we will actually address emissions. I mean,
yeah. I think,
no
like you say there, it's more a fact of how do we present the evidence until we get to a point where everybody's involved, and like you say, those that earn the coin can actually earn a coin from doing good rather than just making money.
I mean, I think. Sorry, I was just to finish that thought off. It's like I think there is no shortage of evidence to say we need to do it, but there is the economic system doesn't provide the incentives to do it.
Yeah. And that's the thing. Yeah, and I mean we'll talk about. In fact, I was going to ask about Earth Hour, but let's just jump straight in on what we're wanting to talk about here, and your goals and. What is the Great Reef Census? Let's go from there, Andy. Let's get in it.
Yeah, so I guess going back to this idea of, well, how do you do scalable conservation? What we were trying to do was at a very kind of like, what's the deliverable? We want to collect reconnaissance imagery, broad scale reconnaissance imagery from an area the same size as Germany. And we've got almost no money to do it, but there's critical data. Like that data will help inform where the crown of thorns are. It'll help inform the state of the reef itself. It starts to provide infrastructure for us to do reef intervention and stewardship. So that's what we were trying to build. We were trying to basically build soft infrastructure to do conservation on the reef, collect data, intervene where possible. And so to do that, we basically looked at a kind of shared economy model. So you think about something like Uber or Airbnb. It's like what assets are already there, because we don't have $1 billion to build a research flotilla. So what assets are already there and how can we utilize them? So Census essentially sends out around 100 vessels across the whole of the Great Barrier Reef. There are all sorts of different boats, from tugs to dive boats to super yachts to fishing boats, recreational boats, all sorts, to go out and collect this basic data from as many reefs as possible. And currently, I think in the 3 years we've been doing this, we've surveyed about 15% of the reef using this motley flotilla. And all you do if you're part of Census is you jump in the water on a reef. We're trying to capture what each side of the reef looks like. So you kind of your wild side, your lagoon side, and the pressure points on either end on an average reef. And we take, a couple of people in the water will take 30, 40 images, swimming along with 5 fin kicks between each photograph. And that gives you your basic survey. So that gives you a kind of the data that we can then go, well, how much coral is on that reef? And we simplified that down to look for plate coral, boulder coral, and branching coral. And that's the kind of the second phase. So that's the bit we can ask anybody who's listening to this to go and to give us a hand with. But yeah, so it's bringing back really, really valuable data that's very, very current and that can be analysed very, very quickly on the state of the GBR, the Great Barrier Reef. But what I think is kind of more interesting about it as a model is it actually starts to provide this soft infrastructure. So we're now using it to go and do things like seagrass surveys. We're starting to look for new sites for the high value reefs, the ones that are rebooting the reefs around them. So there's all these kind of future opportunities around this information, and the fact that you can get to these very, very, sometimes very, very remote reefs, or sometimes, the ones that tourist boats go to all the time, but you've built infrastructure. So it's kind of an interesting project in that sense. And everything we've done with this, we've designed so you could do it. You could take it up, you could put it in the Coral Triangle, or you could put it in the Red Sea. And so that's kind of what Census does and how it kind of works. Did I cover that off? Does that make sense?
No, I think it's it's really important to understand it's an incredible community effort. So you've got tourist boats that are donating one of their spots to a project officer such as myself or a volunteer, and that will go out on that existing trip. So also just think about the emissions themselves. Like that boat's already going out there, and somebody's just going onto that boat and then recording that reef. You know what I mean? So it's not like there's there's also specific expeditions, but there's also utilizing what's existing, that existing infrastructure, and getting as many people involved. And by also getting the people involved, people learn on the trips as well. So I did one recently where we went out and we had the presentation at the beginning where we were talking to everybody on the boat about what we were doing and where these images were and where these images were going. And, people were getting involved, and people were really responding really well and positively to the education of it. So there's just so many factors to it. I think it's a huge, I think it's a community effort in the water for a start, but now it's also in a community effort globally on the platform as well for people to be able to analyze it.
So we would definitely.
And sorry, Andy, is there also if people are going out on the Great Barrier Reef on little tourist trips or liveaboards, anything like that, is there a way that they can forward footage to you?
Yeah, so we built a really simple kind of upload platform. So if you went on a dive trip up to the Ribbons on the Great Barrier Reef during Census, you can take photographs with your GoPro or whatever camera you have and upload them really simply into our system. And in fact, there's the vast proportion of images coming in are done by, people are on a dive trip or they're yachties, sailing the boat up and down the reef, or, as I said before, there's a tug company that goes out and captures images as they're doing all the servicing of the mooring lines. So it is a real, as Beck said, it's a massive community effort that's quite well organized.
And going on from there, I mean, you've got the images for analysing. How many images are you getting? Because there must be quite a few. Yeah,
so we've been doing this for 3 years. I think the first year we had about 13,000, and then the second year we were up in the 30,000, and the third year we've been up in the 30,000. So I think there's about 79, nearly 80,000 images in the system at the moment. And so we had this kind of crazy moment about a year and a bit ago where we're going, oh shit, we have so much data and we can't afford to have experts analyzing everything. So we started to build this kind of amazing hybrid platform using AI and the human eye to allow us to do really fast analysis of images coming back from the reef. And we've got that sort of as a campaign running at the moment. But that is a key part of the system that we've been building. So if you've got this motley flotilla going out, we now need citizen scientists all over the world to help us do the analysis, and it's all aided by AI and trained by experts. So yeah, it's a pretty cool system, and we're testing that on scale at the moment. So you can hop on and have a look.
And that's the thing. I mean, it's something that anybody anywhere in the world can do, and you can do it from your smartphone.
Yeah, you can do it. Well, we had this kind of idea that we wanted to be able to get somebody who was commuting to work in Jakarta to be able to analyze an image in 2 minutes. That was our kind of brief to us, and accurately analyze it. So that's what we've built, and it works. It's pretty amazing, actually.
Ladies and gentlemen, if you would like to see how you can analyze the images on Citizen's database, nip over to our YouTube channel for the next 2 minutes of this episode. There is a great video showing you the full process with Citizen's Nicole explaining throughout. Simply follow the link in the show notes and don't forget to hit that subscribe button so you can keep up to date with all of the new content as we build out the Scuba Goat YouTube channel. I just wanted to show that how easy it is to get involved with this project, this major project that you're doing. And without the support of people being able to do this, it's going to take you an infinite amount of time to try and analyze that data that's coming in. So everyone can do their bit.
And we really do. We need everybody's help on this. Like, this is kind of the call to action, is that we need everybody to hop online, go onto the website, analyze a photo, analyze 5 photos would be amazing. And also share it with your friends, share it with your family, try and spread the word on what we're trying to do here, and get involved. And just,
if you've got a company or you've got a big group that you're involved with, we actually can build these kind of leaderboards so you can start to see, who in your company has done the most, how many images have been done, and so you can sort of gamify it within an organization. If anyone's interested in doing that, let us know as well.
Dude, you've just literally touched on a point that I had a little epiphany moment when the other night over a couple of whiskeys. Games. Everybody plays games on their phones, and there's a lot of games out there now where you need like gems or coins or tokens or something like this to play the game. So the gaming companies have these little sidelines of, watch this advert and get game coins or whatever for you to continue with your game. There's quite a few phone app companies in Australia, and I'm sure we could approach those people and say, hey, rather than getting people to look at adverts for other games, why don't you get them to analyze a few photos for us? You've already got a hierarchy there that shows that you're an ambassador for the amount of photos that you've done, and then that person in turn gets rewarded with coins or gems for their game that they're playing in relation to the amount of photos that they do. And that way the digital company is going to say, oh, we're doing a bit for conservation. Yeah, but at least it's getting the job done.
I think it's a fantastic idea, and I think that's the kind of the point, is that it's pretty open to people being able to approach with concepts such as those. It's like, it's an amazing idea, and it can go in so many directions into so many different workforces, spaces. We've been really lucky. We've had support from obviously Dell. We've got Disney in Atlassian. We've got leaderboards already created for existing companies that have donated their team's workforce, and they're on there. The big large scale teams, which is really good. We've had schools analyzing images. We've had like lots of kind of masses of people is really also what we're looking for. So if there's anybody that's got a concept or an idea, like, come and collaborate with us. We're really, really open to just getting this project kind of out there and as many people being involved as possible. And that's what it's all about. It's this community concept of everybody being able to get involved and being open to anyone who has access to a device.
Yeah. And let's be fair, I mean, the Great Barrier Reef is known by everybody in the world. I can't imagine anyone not knowing what it is. Not in this day and age, and being able to do a bit for it. We've not touched on it yet, Andy. Stan, tell me about how it went with recording this. I mean, thank you. I've got to say thank you for the invite, and Becky for having the eureka moment of thinking, oh shit, Matt's down in Sydney. We'll probably get him along to a premiere. And I thoroughly enjoyed it. It was fantastic. But I'd love to know how it went with the recording and the day-to-day stresses of trying to get it to where it is now and being able to get it on the big
it was
screen.
a pretty wild project to get involved with. We heard, I guess we've sort of been playing around with an idea of trying to capture census, but also the other big project that we run called Reef Cooperative, to try and capture it so we can kind of share the story, because it's a bit of a different model to most conservation models. And it was we watched it in the cinema the other night, Matt, and that was the first time I'd seen it on the big screen. It comes out on Stan on June the 5th. I don't know. It was a pretty emotional experience, to be honest with you, because it's kind of 2 years in the making, and
Yeah.
you see lots of edits of it, and you're obviously there in the middle of it, when it's been filmed and stuff. But actually, I think it turned out pretty well. I think hard to critique some of your kind of own stuff, but it was a wild experience to do it. It's not something I hadn't done before, and it was quite interesting watching the process come together towards the end. You see the first version, you're like, oh my god, and then you see the last version, it's like, oh wow, that looks really amazing to see all of that, all those people. But there's some really beautiful bits in the movie. It's feature length doco, and there's some really cool bits, particularly with our partnerships with Irukandji traditional owners, who we do loads and loads of work with, and we work very closely with on the reef, and some of those bits are really quite moving. There's another bit where we took the person who leads the AI team at Dell, this amazing woman called Aruna, who had never been in the sea before, and one of our team here, Yaz, took her out onto the Great Barrier Reef. So it's the first time she'd been in the ocean and the first time she'd been on the Great Barrier Reef, and it was all in one go. And she went with Yaz, this amazing person in our team. And just the look on someone's face, you forget what people, how people react when they see something as extraordinary as a healthy reef. And it was bloody amazing, to be honest. So it was a very cool bit of the movie, slightly teary,
You
Yeah.
know that
Yeah,
as a dive instructor, you remember that.
Oh hell
Incredible.
yes, yeah. I remember the first time ever that I saw a reef, and yeah, I'm in my mask and I was crying like a baby. I freaking loved it. It was fantastic. So yeah, that element there was, and you could see her progression, how she got relaxed in the water as well, because straight away as an instructor you're looking and you can see a fin kicks, bicycle kick in, and 20 minutes, half an hour later she's all over the reef and swimming like a frog.
No, it was really cool. It was very cool. And she, as I said, she'd never been in the ocean before, and now she does. Now she's really into her swimming, and but it was her work that led to the AI breakthrough, and her team that led to the AI breakthrough that's allowed us to continue to build the project, the census project. So super cool on multiple levels.
Yeah, that engagement, having somebody that's got the right skill set, that kind of like collaboration, just by having somebody see it and witness it can.
You know what was cool though? The other thing with that, which reminded me when I was watching the movie, is that the people who are working on the AI have never worked on marine stuff before. And I think there's something really interesting about bringing in people who haven't been looking at this stuff for years and years and years, as well as the experts that are already there. But the idea of bringing in fresh blood and different ways of looking at stuff, I think that shortcutted that whole process in an extraordinary way. So again, to what Becky was saying, it's like this whole project, everything we're building with Citizens is designed to try and utilize the skill and talent that's sitting out there that often doesn't have anything to do with marine conservation. And if you can do that, the breakthroughs could be phenomenal.
I'll wholeheartedly agree, because that what you tend to forget when you're focused on doing a job, and I don't do anything like you guys, but just leading expeditions, you're focused on your achievement of getting people in the water and giving them a good time, but you forget about the passion that people have in something that they've never ever witnessed before. And that, as you say, just bringing in people that have never seen it before, that must have just been a monumental driver for them.
Yeah, no, I definitely think it was, but it's also good for us as well, because I think you do get slight tunnel vision if you work on something all the time, and so the whole model is designed around get out of the bubble. We set up Citizens in Cairns because we wanted to be absolutely on the reef, not set up some, we sat in Sydney or Brisbane or something and, kind of remotely try and organize stuff. But the exciting thing for where we're at the moment is we now, we have people like that AI team was based in Singapore and Sydney. The people who've been writing the software, Sahaj, who've been writing the software, they're down in Melbourne. And so we started to build this kind of cooperative, collaborative team all over the country and starting to be all over the world to try and build this thing. But I would again reinforce the idea that the kind of talent you really need to make this sort of stuff working is not going to be all sitting in Cairns or on the reef itself. but having that connectivity where we're actually in the water making stuff happen is also probably what makes it unique as well, because it's very different from the kind of more traditional conservation model, which is, you know, based in big cities and, you know, sort of top down.
Mate, could this be? Is it your goal to get this as big as Earth Hour? Can it be as big, if not bigger than?
I don't think it's the goal, but I think a lot of the Earth Hour, what we learned in Earth Hour was that it is possible to mobilize hundreds of millions of people. And maybe for Earth Hour, that was in a symbolic sense of, you know, lights out for an hour. But actually, we went beyond the hour after about 5 or 6 years. It was very hard to do it, but we went beyond the hour and we started to have really big conservation sort of results in lots of different places. I think with Citizens, we built it the other way around from Earth Hour. So Earth Hour was a campaign, and then we tried to do conservation with it. And it was a very effective campaign, very hard to switch it to conservation, but it did in the end. You know, in the last year that I was running it, I think because WWF, the World Wildlife Fund, was the parent kind of company in it. And I think in the last year that we were running, I was running Earth Hour. I think out of the top 5 global results for WWF, 3 of them came out of the Earth Hour community. So I think what I took from that was, well, how do you do that again? If you did it again, how would you do it? So we actually designed Citizens the other way around. So we built the conservation machine first and the community on ground bit on the Great Barrier Reef first. And then this bit that we're in now, where we're asking people to help us with the analysis, that's starting to build the kind of mass mobilization. Because today we'll be asking people to help us identify that coral. Tomorrow it could be identify habitat, complex habitat for fish, or it could be, we don't know what it could be, right? But it's just constantly thinking about, if you want to achieve scale, you have to empower both local community and communities around the world, and you have to really embrace and encourage the use of talent, skills from all sorts of walks of life in order to build it, whether it be AI, whether it be communication, whether it be, you know, driving a boat. It's get it out of the field of only experts. Make sure you've got some of the best experts in the world working on it, but move it into the domain of this is everybody's job.
Yeah. I mean, and collaboration, you've mentioned that word a few times now, and I quite frankly, I fucking love it. I think collaboration is key in every success in any environment, in any industry. And no more so in this major project that you're doing now.
No, absolutely right.
Have you just? I'm gonna have to back it up. I usually ask this right at the start, but how have you, Andy, gone from doing Earth Hour to ending up in Cairns and focusing on the Great Barrier Reef? What are the stepping stones that brought you to where you are now?
Well, so it was pretty weird. After I left Earth Hour, I went and worked in Amsterdam on circular economy. So, you know, and I ran an organization there for a couple of years. But then the reef, that first of those big bleachings happened in 2016, and I've always loved the reef. Even when I was knee high to a grasshopper, I was like in love with the reef. And when I first came to Australia in 2002, I was on the reef within sort of 3 days of getting into Australia, and so it just has a sort of place in my heart. But the other thing is, if you think about Earth Hour, okay, so the symbolic part of Earth Hour was the lights off for an hour and the fact that people came together and kind of spent that time. If you think about the Great Barrier Reef, in some ways it's become the poster child for climate change, often in a very negative sense. But it is so iconic. It is so extraordinary. And it is actually so beautiful that if you want to find a symbol on which to rally, you know, a common purpose on which to make stuff happen, it seems to, you know, that's what the Great Barrier Reef is for me and for us, I think. And so, but whatever we do on so basically going, right, how can you build something that's really functional, that's really practical, that can actually make a difference, that actually is doing something? That's what we've been building. Now we're scaling. And that's probably the most exciting time to work on it, because a lot of the really shitty hard work's being done. The first 3 years of Citizens was probably the worst job I've ever had in terms of trying to get it working and trying to work out what it was and how it could work.
I think it's really important to just mention at this point as well, there's a core team of 4 people. You know, I've come in to support the project, and we've had other amazing people come in to support the project, etc. But the core team is tiny, and it's a huge task. So everybody has poured their blood, sweat, and tears into this. It really is like a passion project. You know, it's been pretty incredible to watch.
It's also really kind of rewarding, though, in the sense of like, yes, there's a very small core team, but there is this group of people around the reef itself, and now in Sydney and in Singapore and in Melbourne, and who are all just making it happen. And in fact, you've got this core team, but then you've got a bigger team around it that is made up of skippers and film producers, and it's extraordinary, and it's very similar to Earth Hour on that front. But what's probably different from Earth Hour is, because we built it the other way around, is the direct effect is already happening, and everything's built to scale. So if you wanted to do this and take it to the Red Sea, very, very, very doable. If something's happening in the Red Sea and then you wanted to bring it back here, or you want to kind of build that scope and scale around the world, it's super efficient, right? So you can, you're building knowledge, building expertise, and building support for potentially a global network that could implement marine conservation on a scale never done before.
Exciting times
Crazy,
ahead. Right? And I know. I can only imagine how quickly Egypt, the Red Sea, would be covered with the amount of boats that are there.
It's a cool concept.
And I don't want to give too much away from the movie, because I'm sure people will want to watch it. But there's quite and I've got to say, and I found it quite entertaining and rather funny. You've done a lot of pulling your hair out trying to get funding for a long time, and then eventually there's a bit of funding comes in, isn't there? So congratulations on that one.
Yeah, no, Cotton On Foundation was a big funder for both Census and the Reef Cooperative, and there's a bit in the movie where we get told, we've been working a long while to try and get that across the line, and it happens, and it's just one of those kind of mad little moments.
Yeah. We touched on it a little bit earlier on, but one of the major questions I wanted to hit on here as well was that how do you engage and involve local communities in the conservation initiatives, and why is the community participation important in protecting the reef?
Yeah, it's a really good question, and the first thing to say about it is that it's all these people who work up and down the reef. Generally, most of them love the reef. And many of them have more knowledge about the Great Barrier Reef than any scientist or any researcher or even the marine parks. So if you find yourself a skipper that's been working the reef for 30 years, his or her knowledge will be, second to none. They'll be the ones who'll be able to back a boat right up to the reef, dump some people in there to do a survey and get out. They're the ones who have noticed any changes, what's better, what's worse, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So one of the kind of primary ways of thinking about this is think about these people not as kind of someone we're trying to get on board because it seems like a good idea, it seems like a good idea, or you want to tick a box or something. It's like, if you want to find the biggest wealth of knowledge, it's the people who work and live on the reef. So it's the skippers, it's the dive instructors, it's the people who've spent 12 years on a dive boat, looking after people on different, these are assets. This is the kind of experience you want working on this kind of stuff. And once you kind of recognize that this is basically completely pretty much untapped group of people out there that can be game changing if you're trying to do whatever you're trying to do in terms of conservation and stewardship, that's amazing. Then add on top of that, maybe even start with this, the traditional owner groups who are generally super keen to be on sea country and whose knowledge goes back not 30 years, but historically can go back 60,000 years. You've got, again, all of this wealth of knowledge, experience, and passion, and desire to help. That's like all you got to do is work out how to tap into it. So, but what we have generally found is that people really want to be part of something, and often they're frustrated that they've never been asked. So that's kind of cool. Now, I would imagine, because we found this with Earth Hour, I would imagine that's the same all over the world.
Yeah, for sure. There's just reflecting on the movie again. The another part that I loved was the bird's eye view of forgive me, I forgot his name now, but the chap that is focused on putting the spiders, the metal frames in to restore and regrow the.
Was it Tarquin? Is it the one where? Yeah,
that's him. Yeah, the bird's eye view of the boat, and then just the snorkelers coming out, and they're doing this constant cycle of putting in the structures to assist with the regrowth. It's fantastic.
Yeah, it's a crazy project. I mean, we have. We're really lucky. We work with some amazing people, Tarquin, and there's another guy in the movie called Eric who has sort of driven some of this very, very impactful conservation efforts on very specific reefs. But again, if you took someone like Tarquin or you took someone like Eric, they've got both have an incredibly large amount of knowledge on those certain reefs, and they would be second to none. I reckon some of these people are some of the best conservationists I've ever met, and they work in the case of Eric, he works for tourism and runs a massive restoration and stewardship project on one of the reefs, now two of the reefs. And Tarquin, traditional owner, he's our first employee at the Reef Cooperative, and just wants to be in the water, wants to be doing stuff, and brings with him a wealth of not just current knowledge but historical knowledge as well.
And quite a few mates by the looks of it as well.
Yeah, that's exactly right. That's exactly right. He's also a top bloke. Very funny. Yeah, both of them are.
Have you seen any notable positive changes or progress in the health and resilience of the GBR since establishing citizens?
I think that it's important to see that it's changing. Like I've definitely noticed it's changing, and we're learning more about the coral's resilience and what's happening to the reef and the structure and how it's adapting and changing because of stresses, etc. So I would say more so that obviously I've definitely experienced areas of destruction, etc. But also noticed just it changing constantly over my time.
There's an argument to say that that's a natural occurrence as well, is it not? Because the reef is always changing, and I've spoken to people who are convinced that it's slowly travelling south as well. What about the naysayers that would say that it's not down to global warming and et cetera, it's just a natural phenomenon?
You just
growth.
Look. Well, you just look at the evidence. This is evidence based, right? So we are getting more and more frequent incidents on the reef. However, it's also really important to say that the last few years, whilst we've had bleachings every year during what's it called? Not El Nino, the other one. La Nina. The water has been, should have been cooler anyway, but there's been really good coral growth in a lot of parts of the reef over since 2017. And we go in the water and you will still find extraordinary places. And the funny thing is as well is that you kind of also understand less than you thought you did, or maybe not us, but you're learning more and more. Like, so we would go to reefs that looked like they'd been heavily impacted by hot water. We certainly found that down in the Swains, which is the sort of southern end of the Great Barrier Reef, and you'd go in the water and then we'd find reefs that were meant to have been should theoretically have been really badly damaged by heat, and they were the best reef I've ever dived on. According to our modelling, should have been trashed, and it was so beautiful. Honestly, it was me and a guy called Professor Pete Mumby. We both were surveying this reef out in the middle of the Swains, and we both came to the surface, and I didn't know whether to laugh or cry. It was just so extraordinarily beautiful. But then we've been to other reefs that should have been in good health, and they were not, and they're in really, really bad health. And you're like, what the hell happened here? So that nuance of what's going on is something that we're discovering more and more about as we do more and more reconnaissance. But the direction of travel is really clear, and the amount of energy being and heat being pushed into the oceans is clearly having an effect, and of course it is. And we sort of should be well past do we have a problem question. Come back to the actual current issue now is, will the economic models that all our economies run on actually enable us to address this?
Yeah, and I do like. I'm going to try and find it. In fact, I'll just ask you guys because you're with me. There's a 2-sentence thing that you have on the as a subheading. Was it the time is now?
It's no longer the
help me out here, guys. What's it called?
of talking.
End of talking, time of doing. I got that quite right. I got that wrong. It's like end of talking, age of doing.
Yeah,
basically that.
Yeah, and I think that hits the nail on the head, because what pisses me off, not just on the conservation side of things, is that as a global community, we're just driven by people that are wealthy and don't really give a shit, and all they want to do is say, we're going to do, and it's time to do. And I think you've hit the nail on the head.
I also feel that, you know, one of the things that we got to with this is like, if you think about Earth Hour was important symbolism. It was, you know, it was showing intent. It was trying to kind of, you know, mobilize hundreds of millions of people to send a message. And it was a hopeful message, but we're sort of beyond that now, you know, and now it needs to get very, very practical everywhere. And so, you know, I think we're beyond the age of the petitions and the kind of that kind of stuff. It's like, well, what the hell do we do? How are we going to make stuff actually happen? And and I don't mean that in a kind of this, you know, because we're still, as Beck said, you know, we're still relatively small, but you can see the power, that's the potential there. But and having people analyze an image is important, not just because we want the data analyzed, but also that person's going to learn a bit.
It's that knowledge.
And then they become an advocate. So it's all of these things at the same time, but being very practical and getting stuff done is where we need to be right now.
I think
and it makes it, the thing is, it makes those words louder as well. You know, saying that we need to do it now. If for every single person that comes on and just analyzes photos, it's a very, very hard argument to go against if you've got hundreds of millions of people looking at photos and just getting involved. A collaborative force is very, very difficult to say. It's not,
and
not
it's definitely step one as well, man. We're trying to go, right, well, will people do this? Will they actually give up 5 minutes of screen time just to do this?
And I think if you can think about being conscious with that, being conscious of your screen time and what you're using your screen time, you can also start to be conscious of other things. You know, how can I be more ecologically conscious in general? You know, what decisions can I make that are in my day-to-day life that are going to have a better effect for the planet? So being more conservative with electricity, being more conservative with how you're traveling, etc., and thinking about your use of non-renewable materials, etc. Just making those decisions as well, being more conscious.
Yeah. Okay, give me a timeline then. What's coming up over the next week or two?
So obviously,
you're gonna be busy little bees in that hub
going
there,
back on a Cots boat tomorrow.
I'm just going to be underwater.
Oh, so she's running away,
and
I'm on the ground. Okay.
Yeah. She's going to be trying to get Crown of Thorns to
helping
do analysis.
So we've got
stick a TG6 on his tentacles.
So we're doing kind of this next week specifically as Reef Week, and it's in kind of collaboration with it being World Oceans Day on the 8th of June.
World Environment Day, World Reef Day. So like World Reef Day is like the first. Is it the first, isn't it?
Well, World Environment Day is on the 5th, and then we've got World Oceans Day on the 8th of June.
And I think World Reef Day is on like the 2nd of June.
Quite possibly could be. It's not.
Anyway, it's a week of a lot of stuff. And
we have a hackathon as well on the 2nd of June in collaboration with Paddy. So Paddy are also sharing this on all their channels as well to kind of help the kind of Paddy audience also get involved. We have heaps of stuff going on this week. So this week is a really, really good time for you to help us get some images analysed. So
there's two things there. I reckon the first one is if you're an individual and you want to get on and give us a hand, definitely do. It's greatcensus.org. And then the second one is if you're attached to or involved in an organization, it could be a football club or a company or whatever, and you can rally some of your comrades, your staff, your employees, or your team to help. If you've got a fair few of them, we can set up a leaderboard so you can see who's doing the best. We've done those for Disney and Mars and various other companies at the moment.
As well, yeah.
But yeah, so pretty easy to get involved. If you can get lots of people, let us know, and we'll make that easy for you.
I'll get Marco to touch base with you again then. He's the Italian guy that came across the other night with me, and he runs Sydney Viz, which I think there's over 10,000 people in
that's
that
dive group, isn't
Facebook
it?
group.
And somebody else had mentioned him to me as well.
Yeah.
So no, it'd be really good to have a proper chat with them.
Yeah.
Let me I'll have a quick look now. See how many. I'm in there. It's a very, very active group.
That's what we need. Active groups.
Yeah, there's over 11,000 members.
Okay, that's perfect. That's a great example. So anybody else who's involved in anything like that, please let us know. Try and we can make. We've got some really easy stuff to help you get things going. Excuse me.
Yeah. So, ladies and gents, if you want to get involved, get involved. I'll put all the details in the show notes. And if I'm not around, you can contact these guys directly. But I would strongly urge you to use a bit of your screen time and help out and analyze some of these photos. Like I say, I've done 25 and it's done less than 30 minutes. You know, every time I had a cup of tea or jump on a bus, then I'd swipe on and do a couple. And it makes a huge, huge contribution. And it makes it nice and easy as well for these guys to do their job and save what is arguably one of the most beautiful reefs in the world. Andy, Becky, thank you so much for joining me.
Thanks for
and
coming last week.
I look forward to. Yeah, that was brilliant. And yeah, I got a little bit.
Yeah, it was a bit dusty the next day. But anyway.
Happy days. Well, next time we'll probably have to have a bit of food as well, just to absorb it a little bit. Ladies and gents, thanks for listening, and bye for now.
Is Scuba Goat Under the Sea, the podcast for the inquisitive diver.